Cowboy hands blanket to shivering Apache girl. At dawn, her tribe claims he just wed her. The wind had been screaming through Bitter Creek Pass since dawn, honing every snowflake to a knife edge. Ethan Walker bent low in the saddle, coat snapping behind him like a torn flag while his roan mare labored chest-deep in drifts. 3 days he'd been riding west, and each mile felt like an argument with the mountain. Yet this was the first moment he wondered if the mountain might actually win. A dark, motionless lump broke the white monotony ahead. Instinct nudged his hand toward the colt on his hip, but the nearer he came, the smaller the threat looked, until the threat wasn't one at all. It was a girl, Apache, maybe 19, wedged behind a boulder no wider than a tombstone, her deer-hide dress lacquered with ice. Frost jeweled her lashes, her fingers were turning blue. Ethan swung down, boots crunching, cold knife through his gloves as he brushed snow from her cheek. Her eyelids fluttered, revealing eyes dark and clear as obsidian, eyes that had already decided dawn would never come. A saloon's worth of warnings rattled in his skull. Help the wrong person out here, and you'll end up buzzard bait. Saloon whispers weren't worth a life. He unlashed the navy and cream blanket from his bedroll. Hand-stitched by his mother 10 winters past, it crossed his palm like a blessing. He cocooned the girl in the wool. She gasped, a sound between shock and relief, clutching the fabric as though it were fire itself. "Stay with me," Ethan muttered, uncertain she understood. Guiding her to a snug rock cleft, he struck flint to bark. Firelight bloomed, soft, gold, defiant. Snow hissed to steam. The girl's shivers eased, her breaths formed steady clouds. Minutes passed, measured only by crackling resin and the gale's distant roar. At last she touched her chest. "Kaya," she whispered. The name floated over the flames like a fragile feather. Ethan tipped his hat. "Ethan!" They shared leathery jerky and half-frozen coffee. Ethan felt her gaze mapping every scar on his face, as though carving it into memory. He found himself wondering who might be searching for her, or who she might be fleeing. Dawn seeped pale behind the sawtooth peaks. Kaya tried to return the blanket. Ethan closed her numb fingers around it. 1 more mile without it, and she'd be dead, he reasoned. Pressing the wool against her heart, he mounted the mare. "Keep warm," he said, a promise he didn't recognize as a vow. With a final nod, he turned toward Copper Ridge, disappearing into the storm. Kaya watched until blizzard and distance erased horse and rider, clutching the blanket tight, eyes shining with hope and a fear that beat like distant drums. The trading post at Copper Ridge squatted in the valley like a battered fort, its log walls frosted white, chimney bleeding smoke into a pewter sky. Ethan pushed through the door and straight into the smell of damp wool and black coffee. Old Man Parsons looked up from wiping a rifle, gray brows arching. "Thought the pass would bury you," he rasped, shoving a tin mug across the counter. Ethan drank. The coffee was sludge, but it chased the ice from his chest. At a corner table, Jed Doyle and Scarjaw Pete nursed whiskey over a lazy game of cards. Talk drifted around, blown bridges and fresh graves. Wagon train hit 20 miles south. Bodies left like scarecrows, Jed said, face pale beneath grime. Ethan kept his eyes on the steam curling from his cup, yet felt Kaya's stare lingering in his mind, a warmth against the chill of their stories. A low thump rolled through the floorboards, distant, hollow. The men stilled. Another beat followed, then another, weaving through the canyon like a heartbeat for the land itself. Pete's fingers tightened on his glass. "War drums," Parsons muttered. "Been thumping since dawn." Nightfall came early, thick with unease. Ethan stretched onto a straw bunk in the back room, but the drumming only grew, circling the valley like wolves. Every pulse seemed to speak his name in a language older than English, older than fear. Sometime before dawn, the drums ceased, and the hush that followed felt sharper than any blade. He was in the saddle before first light, mist dragging around Bess's hooves. Parsons watched from the doorway, worry etched deep. "Best ride fast and silent," the old man called. Ethan answered with a nod, but he'd barely cleared the post when figures rose out of fog. 7 Apache warriors materialized, horses painted in ghostly stripes. They did not charge. They formed a gate. Their leader, a tall elder with iron hair and eyes like flint, lifted a hand. Ethan halted, palms open. From behind the elder, Kaya urged her pony forward. Ethan's blanket draped her shoulders now like royal regalia. Her cheeks, once blue, glowed with life. Her eyes carried a storm of apology and resolve. She spoke carefully, English wrapped around Apache cadence. My grandfather, Chief Gray Wolf, says the blanket you gifted me is a vow of marriage. You have claimed me. The words struck harder than any rifle butt. Ethan's breath clouded. His pulse thundered. I only meant to keep you alive, Gray Wolf answered in a low rhythmic stream. Kaya translated, voice trembling. Intention weighs less than deed. Return with us. Fulfill the promise, or blood will wash the dishonor. One warrior, broad-shouldered, scar across his brow, rested a hand on his lance, hunger for violence plain in his stare. Ethan's fingers twitched toward his Colt, but he stopped. A single twitch could spark a massacre. He looked at Kaya, blanket clasped to her heart, fear mingled with something like hope. Ethan drew a breath that tasted of gunpowder and snow. All right, he said, lowering his hand. Take me to your village. Let's find out what a blanket's promise truly costs. Behind him, the trading post faded into mist. Ahead, unseen drums waited for a new rhythm, and Ethan Walker rode toward it, the mountain pass silent as a held breath. The procession wound deeper into the mountains, trading pine for red sandstone walls that glowed like embered iron beneath the rising sun. Ethan rode in the center, flanked by silent warriors whose shadow-painted faces offered no clue whether they escorted a guest or a condemned man. Kaya kept just ahead, blanket rippling behind her like a banner he hadn't meant to raise. Hours later, the gorge narrowed to a throat, then opened without warning onto a valley the color of dried blood. Dozens of wickiups and earthen lodges spotted the basin beside a clear stream. Smoke feathered skyward. Children's laughter fluttered, then died the instant they saw Ethan. One by one, game of tag, weaving baskets, tending fires, all froze. Fear, curiosity, resentment, 3 masks on every face. Chief Gray Wolf dismounted near a wide communal fire pit ringed with cedar logs. He gestured. The warriors encircled Ethan, but kept weapons sheathed. A hush thick enough to chew settled over the village. From the largest lodge strode Tallulah, Kaya's grandmother. Her silver braids were threaded with turquoise. Her gaze could have chipped stone. She spoke in rapid Apache, voice sharp as a hawk's cry. Kaya answered meekly, head bowed. Tallulah's eyes snapped to Ethan, raking him head to boot. She spat in the dust, verdict rendered without a word of English. Before Ethan could guess its meaning, a younger warrior muscled forward, broad, handsome, spear scar across his shoulder. His glare carried the heat of a branding iron. Dakota, you bring trouble, stranger. Kaya belongs here, to me. He thumped a fist against his chest, then jabbed a finger at the blanket. A ripple of agreement murmured through onlookers. Ethan met Dakota's challenge with a calm he didn't feel. Any sign of fear was blood in the water. Gray Wolf lifted a hand. Silence fell like an axe. He addressed the crowd. Cadence slow but implacable. Kaya translated, voice quavering yet clear. Kaya, my grandfather says our ways demand balance. A blanket freely given binds 2 souls, but a binding must be proven. Ethan Walker will face 3 marriage trials at sunset. Whispers surged, some excited, some anxious. Tallulah folded her arms, lips set like a locked chest. Kaya continued, eyes never leaving Ethan's. Strength, climb Thunder Cliff and return with a sacred eagle feather. Wisdom, read the meaning of the ancestor stone before the night fire dies. Sacrifice, yield that which his heart cherishes above all else. Failure in anyone would stain the tribe's honor. The price for washing away that stain was spelled out in the cold glint of Dakota's knife. Success would seal the marriage and keep peace. Ethan swallowed. The cliff he'd glimpsed on the ride in rose sheer behind the village. A red wall scratched by centuries of wind. Easiest task first, he thought darkly. He turned to Gray Wolf, choosing words like stepping stones across a river of knives. Ethan, I didn't come here to dishonor your family or mine. I'll meet your trials, and whatever truth they hold. Grey Wolf inclined his head. Not approval, not denial. Merely acknowledgement that the game pieces were set. Dakota slipped closer, voice low and venomous. Dakota sun goes down fast in these cliffs, pale rider. Pray your courage lasts longer. Ethan held the stare, saw anger, pride, and buried deep, fear of losing more than a wager. We'll both find out, Ethan said. Tallulah stepped between them, thrusting a small clay cup of ochre salve toward Ethan. An unexpected gesture. She spoke. Kaya translated. Kaya grandmother says even an enemy deserves to face the trials whole. For your wounds, so excuses find no foothold. Ethan dipped 2 fingers, smeared the cooling paste over the dried blood on his shoulder, and nodded gratitude he hoped showed in more than words. The sun inched west, shadows lengthening across crimson earth. Drums began their heartbeat once more. Slower this time, a countdown neither Ethan nor the village could ignore. When the final note faded, Thunder Cliff would be waiting, and every soul present would see whether a stranger's blanket was courage or mere cloth. The sun balanced on the canyon rim like a dying coal when Grey Wolf lifted his arm and the drums ceased. All breath in Red Canyon seemed to wait with them. Ethan stepped to the foot of Thunder Cliff, rope coiled at his waist, Kaya's heartstone warm in his palm. Far above, a black smudge of sticks marked the eagle nest, 60 feet of barren vertical away. He tested the first handhold. Sandstone flaked under his fingers. Below, Dakota folded his arms, sure of the stranger's fall. Ethan climbed anyway, muscles burning, boots skidding for purchase. 20 feet, wind whipped at his coat. 30, blood from yesterday's gash reopened, slicking the rope. At 40, the cliff bulged. He dangled, one hand clawed in grit, the other gripping rope as legs swung in empty air. A roar ripped the silence. A golden eagle exploded from the nest, wings like thunder. Talons slashing. Pain striped Ethan's shoulder. He lunged, seized a single flight feather, then repelled with reckless jumps that rattled his bones. When his boots hit dirt, the valley exhaled. Some children cheered. Tallulah hid a reluctant smile. Ethan dropped to one knee, offered the feather to Grey Wolf, who accepted it with solemn nod before thrusting the ancestor stone into Ethan's raw hands. Night gathered fast. The ceremonial fire blazed high, its lifespan the only clock. Carvings crawled over the stone. Bear, eagle, serpent, spiral blanket, sun arcs. Ethan sat cross-legged, shock of the climb still shaking his breath. Sparks leapt skyward. Whispers hissed around him. He traced grooves, mind racing. Seasons, directions, choices. The fire settled lower. Sweat chilled on his skin. Kaya's blanket fluttered at the edge of the circle. Reminder of the single deed that had birthed this storm. Spiral, blanket, warmth. An idea clicked. He stood, voice hoarse but steady. Bear is power taken, eagle is power above, serpent is power abandoned. The blanket, he held the stone high, is power shared in the coldest season. The riddle isn't about animals. It asks what a man does when someone is dying in winter. Grey Wolf barked a word. The fire collapsed to glowing embers as if obeying him. Murmurs rippled. Agreement. Ethan passed the stone back. The chief's eyes held grudging respect. Last, Tallulah untied a deerskin pouch. Bones as small as sparrow toes spilled in a fan. She knelt, reading shapes only she understood, then pointed at Ethan's chest. Kaya's whisper cracked. The sacrifice must be what your heart values most. Ethan's gaze drifted to Bess, tethered beyond the fire, then to the colt on his belt. Freedom and survival both. But his hand moved higher, touching the inner pocket of his shirt. There lay the faded tintype. Father erect in cavalry blue, mother smiling despite the war-era lens. His last tether to another life. Dakota's smirk sharpened, certain no white rider would burn his past for an Apache girl. Ethan's thumb brushed the cold metal one final time, then he stepped to the embers. Fire reflected in Kaya's widening eyes. My parents taught me mercy, he said, voice rough. If living by their lesson means losing their likeness, let the lesson stand. He set the photograph among the coals. Paper curled, silver nitrate blistered. Faces liquefied into smoke spiraling to the stars. The crowd went silent enough to hear ash settle. Then Tallulah rose, touching Ethan's cheek with 2 fingers stained by soot. A benediction. Grey Wolf lifted both arms. The trials are met, Kaya translated, tears bright. Strength without cruelty, wisdom without pride, sacrifice without hesitation. The blanket's promise is proven true. Ethan swayed, suddenly weightless, as drums restarted. Not war drums now, but a steady, triumphant heartbeat welcoming him into a future forged by fire, stone, and a single threadbare blanket. Dawn crept over Red Canyon in bands of rose and gold, painting the lodge roofs as if the night's embers had taken to the sky. Ethan stood at the central fire, smoke feathering past his shoulders, exhaustion tugging at every muscle. Yet an odd, expectant calm steadied his heartbeat. Chiefs, warriors, children, even the sharp-eyed elders had gathered in a wide circle, waiting to see what sunrise would decide. Grey Wolf stepped forward, staff tapping the packed earth. His words rolled like distant thunder. Kaya stood beside Ethan, translating sentence by sentence. Strength can conquer stone, she echoed, but compassion conquers fear. Ethan Walker has shown both. From this sunrise on, he is welcome as son and husband. A murmur swept the crowd, some relieved, some astonished. Tallulah approached with a folded deerskin shirt stitched in sky blue beads. She draped it across Ethan's forearms. The scent of sage and wood smoke clung to the leather. For the man who gave warmth in winter, Kaya murmured of her grandmother's meaning. Ethan bowed, unfamiliar tears stinging tired eyes. Dakota pushed through the onlookers, spear left behind. He halted an arm's length away. No heat in his glare now, only a solemn admission of defeat. Slowly he extended a hunting knife, hilt first. Sunrise flashed along the blade. "Guard her well," Dakota said. English rough but clear. Ethan closed his hand over the weapon, then over Dakota's forearm. The handshake drew quiet respect from those who had bet on blood. Drums lifted, a rolling heartbeat that echoed off canyon walls. Women sang, children scattered cedar boughs, filling the air with green sweetness. Kaya guided Ethan to sit beside her on a low log. The navy and cream blanket pooled over both their shoulders. Beneath it, their fingers wove together like roots finding new earth. A feast followed, roasted venison, blue corn cakes, juniper tea. Ethan helped ladle stew, laughter replacing the wary silence that had greeted him yesterday. Gray-haired men inspected his rope-burned palms. Young boys begged stories of the eagle strike. He told them modestly, but their gasps made his scars feel like medals. When the sun reached its zenith, Kaya led Ethan up a narrow path overlooking the valley. Wind teased her hair. The blanket snapped once like a sail. "Do you mourn what you burned?" she asked, voice barely louder than the breeze. Ethan considered the empty pocket where the tin type had rested. "I thought I would," he admitted, "but the memory's still here." He tapped a spot above his heart, then touched the blanket's fabric. "And something new has taken root." Kaya opened her palm. A sliver of charred silver lay there, the corner of the photograph she'd plucked from the fire. "Past need not vanish completely," she said. "It can travel with us lighter." Ethan closed her fingers around the scrap, then placed her hand over his chest, blanket enfolding them both. Below, drums shifted into a dance rhythm, smoke from cooking fires curling like prayers. The valley no longer felt like a battlefield of customs. It felt like home walls rising log by log. Ethan drew a deep breath of cedar and river air. For the first time since the blizzard, he felt truly and irrevocably warm.